Yes, hello everybody. Good afternoon, everybody over there. This is Krishna Vedula here. I want to get started. It's according to my clock, it is 6 o'clock. So let me take a few minutes to set the stage before we hand it over to Dr. Ashok Shettar, who is waiting. Some of you may be aware that we had a meeting which was facilitated by the World Bank and CII and at Infosys, and this included for people from AICTE and NBA and industry and academia. And the idea of that workshop on January 9th in Bangalore at Infosys, it was a small group, about 45 people. The idea of that workshop was to try to make some recommendations for engineering education in India for 2025. That is 10 years from now. So there were some important recommendations that came out of that, and the topmost of the recommendations was the need for good governance and leadership, in the engineering institutions all over India, and particularly because more and more institutions are seeking autonomy. Yeah, and so the top recommendation was to give colleges autonomy and help them, have practice governance and leadership very effectively, so that they can improve the quality of their engineering education. So that was emerged as the number one, recommendation. And obviously, Dr. Ashok Shettar, who was there, was the leader of this some of the discussion in this area, and actually summarized the proceedings of the workshop along with Venkatesh Valluri from industry. So Dr. Shettar has, over the past several years, has led the institution, BEB College of Engineering and Technology, which, by the way, has just recently become the BEB Technological University. It has become a university. So Ashok, you need to update your slides. So congratulations on a good recognition of your excellent leadership at BEB, which is now Technological University. So if you look around different colleges, I think that you have public institutions and private institutions, and among the private institutions, BBB stands out as the leader in this effort to improve governance and leadership, and recognition by that has been given by TechWhip, the World Bank program. So they use his model as an example of how other colleges and TechWhip should try to improve their governance and leadership practices. Another college which is in the public space, which is College of Engineering Pune, has also shown a lot of excellent progress in governance and leadership, and transformed itself. So here we have today Dr. Ashok Shettar, who will enlighten us a little bit about the governance and practices that have helped BBB improve its quality enormously in the last few years, and hopefully we will all learn a little bit about how to use some of these best practices and try to implement that at our own institutions. On behalf of IUCE, I would like to say that this is not just a standalone webinar. We would like to continue this this process of increasing the awareness and helping colleges which would like to improve their governance and best practices, as part of the recommendations of EEI 2025. So those of you interested in following up and working with IUCE and sharing your own best practices, I'm sure some of you also have some outstanding best practices that should be shared. Let us work together as a community. So with that introduction, Dr. Shettar, you are on. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Krishna. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Good afternoon, everyone out there. It's my pleasure to be back on IUCE webinar series. This time, my topic will be adopting good governance practices. I'll try to share our experiences, our journey of last 3 years. As a TechWhip 2 college, we tried to adopt or transform our governance practices in a very systematic way that I would like to share with you all. First, just to give you an overview of our college. It's a government-aided college established in 1947, BEB Engineering College. Our parent organization is the KLE Society that runs over 240 educational and healthcare institutions. We run about 12 undergraduate, 9 postgraduate, and 13 research centers. Campus strength is around 5,400 with 330 faculty. The college attained autonomous status in 2007, and we have been included in the TechUp 2 1.1. And as Professor Krishna was telling just now, this year we have attained the university status. Only thing is that we will be known as KLE Technological University rather than BUB Technology University will be known as KLE Technological University, Hubballi. Now, coming to good governance, there is an increased emphasis on good governance, particularly in the space of engineering institutions in India. Primarily, this awareness has been created by the TechWhip initiative on good governance. A large number of colleges are trying to adopt these practices to improve their performance as well as effectiveness. Now, before we really go into the details of adopting how exactly we can adopt good governance practices, before we go into the details, first I would like to visually put across to you what we mean by good governance, what exactly it can do. This definition has been primarily taken from Good Practice Guide for Governing Bodies, published by Government of India in association with the World Bank. So what a good governance can do? So good governance facilitates decision making. This is a very first primary task of a good governance, you can say. Good governance facilitates decision making. A decision which is rational, informed, and transparent. So several times the bodies, the individuals make decisions regarding the governance. But these decisions we take regarding our institutions need to be rational. They need to be based upon a thought process, on a reasoning. They need to be based upon the realistic data. They need to be informed. All the decisions have to be taken on a realistic data that is available to us. And also these decisions need to be transparent. So good governance really looks at making the decisions that are rational, that are informed, as well as transparent. Now, such decision making ultimately leads to enhancing the organizational efficiency and effectiveness. Okay, so once we increase the organizational efficiency and effectiveness, it ultimately leads to or supports and fosters high quality education and research. Many times during the discussions I have said, I have seen that people don't relate the good governance and academics. They say that, okay, if you plan to teach well, that's good enough. Governance is not an important factor. We need to understand that when we look at the education from institutional perspective, for us to have effective teaching learning process or a high quality education or a high quality research, the governance can really help us to achieve it. So ultimately, good governance does not live in isolation. Ultimately, it delivers us, it helps us to deliver high quality education and research. So the definition of good governance is ultimately a tool to enhance organizational efficiency and effectiveness to deliver high quality education and research. Why we need good governance? What are the outcomes of adopting these good practices? Let's look at the institutional outcomes that are expected out of good governance are something like this. Good governance is helpful to governing bodies in identifying the gaps and developing good practices to be able to follow well accepted international practices. The good governance initiative or the transformation that is based upon good governance will help us to identify the gaps in our governance and adopt some of the good practices that are there across the world to overcome these gaps. Many a times we'll be using good the word or the terminology good practice. What exactly is the best practice or a good practice? A best or good practice is a method or technique that has consistently shown good results than the other methods. So these are called as the good practices or best practices. So by going through good governance program or going through the transformation towards adopting good governance, we can adopt such practices, evolve or adopt such practices. And at the same time, good governance also brings in openness, transparency, and honesty in our operations. So naturally, once an institution has openness, transparency, and honesty in our operation, will become more competitive nationally as well as internationally. And this transparency and honesty will gain stakeholders' confidence, also gain stakeholders' respect and admiration, and increases our image. So the good governance initiative not only increases the effectiveness of the institution, efficiency of the institution, but also it can help us to enhance the image of the institutions in the eyes of the stakeholders, the trust as well as image in the eyes of the stakeholders. Now, when we are looking at good governance, we need to understand that there are three players in this space, particularly in Indian context. There are three players. One is a governing body, two is the executive leadership, third is the regulatory bodies. When I say executive leadership, it is the leadership of the institution or a college. The director or the principal, deans, head of the department, center heads, they all form executive leadership. The governing body, executive leadership together, along with the regulator body, will be working towards a common purpose. This is how education space is looked at. But when we are talking of good governance, many a times, many institutions keep complaining about the regulatory bodies. The regulatory bodies have put these constraints, these rules and all, we can't do something that is needed, they keep telling. But at the same time, we should understand that together, the governing body and executive leadership, we ourselves have a considerable big sphere of influence where the improvements can be brought in, and these improvements can make a big difference to institutional performance. Rather than complaining about the regulatory body constraints, we need to find our own space, how the governing body and executive leadership together finds this space and tries to bring in changes which can effectively enhance the performance of the institution. Now, as earlier I mentioned, TechUp has undertaken a major initiative to drive the good governance. It is called as TechUp 2 Good Governance Program. Whatever experience we have gained through this program in this initiative, I will be referring in my whole webinar. But whenever we look at the programs like TechUp, unfortunately, sometimes there's a grant involved. When there is a grant involved, unfortunately, sometimes we think that this particular grant or this particular program is a way of improving our laboratories and faculty so that we can improve the quality of education. No doubt, these programs, these grants will definitely help us to modernize our laboratories, to update our faculty, and hence improve the quality of education. But at the same time, these programs bring in many good practices and processes to us. And these good practices and processes really help the institutions to build their capability for the future. This fact often we neglect. We take the grant, buy the equipment for the laboratories, and send the faculty for the development. No doubt, it's a good thing. But beyond this, many of the programs like Tech bring in good practices which can help the institution in a long-term growth. For example, whatever equipment we buy under these programs will be there for 3 or 4 years with us. After that, again, we'll have to update our laboratory. But good practices and processes which have worked wonders elsewhere can help us forever, help the institutions forever. So beyond the project period also, they will help us to sustain the growth initiative. So whenever we come across such programs, I always believe that, I request you all that we also have to look at the practices and processes these programs bring to us. In this initiative by Tech World Bank and NPIU, a three-step process has been suggested, which most of the tech colleges adopting good governance are trying to undertake. These three-step method we also adopted. That's the experience. So and it has worked wonders for us. So these suggested steps are: the first step is an institution need to develop its own governance document. Let's look at our own system. How many of our institutions have developed their own governance document? Is there a governance document with us as an institution which guides us in the various tasks that are there in the governance? So by developing institutional governance document, we are able to set the goals for adopting best practices in governance. The second is trying to understand the present. That is, carry out the self-review of the current governance practice by the institution. As an institution, at present, we are following certain governance practices. I mean, in the context of the goals we have set in for governance, we need to critically look at the present system. So for this, the good governance program gives several steps which we will be discussing. So the second step is self-review. The third is, once you know the goal, once you know the present, just develop a plan to fill up the gaps. That is nothing but governance development plan by the institutions. Institution will develop their own governance development plans so that the gap is met. The same steps can be viewed strategically or visually, the more effective way in the next slide. It is when we look at adopting good governance, we can say it is one of the strategic goals, moving from the current state to the desired state. Now, in governance, the desired state is given by the good governance practice. Whatever institutional guideline we develop for governance to adopting the best practices that are there across the world, that will give us the desired state. But this desired state or good governance practice which we want to reach has to have acceptance and ownership. The institutional leadership as well as governing body has to accept the fact that or own the fact that we need to move towards that particular desired state. So this is a desired state which all of us want to reach, defined by our own institutional document. Then we need to conduct our self-review. In governance, how exactly we are faring. Self-review will be critical in the sense that it will tell us our present. But while we are carrying out self-review, we need to be honest. We need to be frank about whatever is there in the present. A honest assessment of the present governance system will give you the reality. So once you know the current state and the desired state, you are clear about the gap. What are the gaps in various governance practices, So knowing this gap, you have to come up with as a third step, you have to come up with a governance development plan. This governance development plan need to be very clear, there need to be clarity, and whatever plan and actions that are to be generated under this governance development plan need to be time bound. So this is the strategic view of the three-step process, right? From setting the goals by defining the desired state, understanding the current state of governance, by which we'll know the gap that is there in our governance practices. Knowing the gap, we develop a solid plan which is going to be implemented in a time-bound manner. So this is the strategic view of the transformation process. Now we'll try to go into details of each of these steps. The first step is developing institutional governance document. That is, we need to adopt good governance practices and convert it into a document which we are going to call as a my institutional governance document. Okay, so this is what the step one is: good governance document of our own institution. We need to ask at this point of time, when there is enough information is available out there about good practices, and when there is a booklet from TechUp 2, which all of us call as a green book, okay, and also called as good practice guide for governing bodies. When that book is there, why we need to develop our own governance document? It is very important that we develop our own governance document, because while developing this document, we will be internalizing many of the issues that are related to the governance. If we just try to follow a book developed by somebody else, probably effective internalization will not be there. But if we are trying to own our own document, the internalization and understanding of the many issues related to the governance will be clear. And at the same time, while developing this governance document, engagement and involvement of the board of directors or board members as well as the executive leadership is very important. Because when both these entities involved in developing this document, it builds the acceptance and ownership. Both the parties will say that this is the document we have developed. We need to follow our governance practices according to this. So the process of developing institutional governance document helps us to build acceptance and ownership. And also, by developing this, not only the present, we'll also be able to negotiate the future. Because a document which is approved by the governing body will not only guide the present, but it will also help us to guide the future votes. So these are the few basic reasons why we need to develop our own governance document. In fact, while developing this particular document for BUB College, it took us over 6 months to finally arrive at this particular document. Lot of brainstorming, lot of engagement, lot of discussions happened between the board and executive leadership to develop this document. And this document heavily draws from TechUp Good Practice Guide for Governing Bodies. So, as I was telling, several rounds of discussions and reviews happened, and also fortunately for us, because we are the first institution to develop this particular document, extensive consultation from and also the mentoring by expert advisory group of World Bank and NPUI were conducted, and from that we were able to learn a lot of things in developing this particular document. This document, what I'm trying to show here is a suggestive list. Okay, what this particular document need to contain. This list is what we have followed. You can go beyond this and you can retain what is more relevant to it. Primarily, while defining the governing role of governing council or governing body, we have identified 5 parameters that need to be we need to be very clear about. Okay, the primary accountabilities of the governing council, openness and transparency in the operation of governing bodies, key attributes, effectiveness and performance review of governing bodies, and how exactly governing body looks at the regulatory compliance. Why these 5 items we have chosen? Just briefly, I would like to discuss with you. In primary accountabilities, we try to bring clarity and focus to the roles and responsibility of the governing body. What are the accountability of the governing body? For example, what duties it has. For example, just few of them I'm trying to give here. It's very essential that the governing body sets the future direction of the institution through strategic plan. It is not only just approving the vision and mission statement, but also it is approving the strategic plan or its own engagement in development of the strategic plan as are required. And at the same time, it is a primary accountability of the governing body that it ensures the establishment of establishment and monitoring of effective and efficient systems of control and accountability, whether it is in finance, human resources management, or procurement processes. In many of the things, governing body has a responsibility to establish and monitor the processes. And at the same time, another example is to monitor the institutional performance as well as quality assurance regularly. So these are the few examples to define what primary accountabilities are. Like this, there could be process, or it is also the responsibility of the governing body to review the head of the institution's performance. So as an institution, you need to develop the clarity about the responsibilities and accountabilities for what the governing body is responsible, for what the governing body is accountable. That clarity need to be developed so that the governing body is very effective. The governing body minutes are very precise in dealing with all these issues. Then, to develop a kind of trust as well as image in the public, it is very necessary that the transactions of the governing body are transparent in nature. And also, we share this information with the stakeholders as well as public. Because no doubt, we may be a private institution, we may be a government institutions, but we are accountable to the public. So for credibility of the governance process, the governing body has to promote transparency and openness. So in your governance guideline document, you have to clearly mention what are the tools and specific steps which will demonstrate the transparency and openness that is expected from a public to ensure the public trust and institutional integrity. Those steps, whether you are going to publish your annual report, whether you are going to put your governance transaction or governing body minutes on the web, how you are going to share with the regulatory bodies, with the public, with your students, with your faculty, all those steps need to be explained in this section of the document. Third, again important, there are certain attributes certain expectations while we are forming the governing body. What are those attributes, key attributes? What is going to be the size of the governing body? What are the skills, experience, and competencies of the governing board members? How you induct or how you select and induct the independent members, and what is the expectation of commitment and conduct of the governing body members. So these are to be defined clearly, because most of the times these are hazy in our system. So the document helps us to bring clarity to all of these. How we'll bring in different skills and experiences and competency that is required for the governing body to run the institutions effectively, we need to look at. Then the next one is effectiveness and performance review of governing body. This is very new, I mean, a kind of a new expectation for an Indian system. Often, I mean, most of the times we don't measure the effectiveness of the governing bodies. No doubt, there may be processes to measure the institutional performance. There may be processes to measure the performance of the head of the institution. But as a governing body, how we measure our own performance? That what are the parameters? What is the rubric by which we measure the performance of the governing bodies? The document should spell out that particular task. The last one, each institution and hence the governing body need to comply the regulatory statutes or ordinances or provisions, whether it can be from AICT, UGC, or from the state government or the university. The body should ensure that regulatory compliance is done by the institution. So what processes and what regulatory statutes it will be looking at, that also should be part of the document. So these are the 5 sections, important sections, the governance document must be covering. This is just a suggestive list. I mean, you can think of many other things to include in your governance document based upon context of your institutions, challenges your institution has. So once you have developed this particular document, institutional governance document, you have set the standards of governance for your body, your governing body, standard for governance. This document sets the standard for governance. So that's the goal. That's where you want to be. That's the desired state. In, let's say, next 2 years, we'll reach that particular desired state. Once you have reached, once you have set the desired state, you need to understand the present. Before that, I will also try to share with you the few challenges you will face as a Indian education institution, higher educational institution in Indian context. It is not going to be easy for you to develop this document. What are the few challenges we faced? I would like to share with you. One major challenge will be most of us lack systemic approach in institutional development or in institutional management. For a proper governance, no doubt you can dream of adopting good governance, but it is most important that for governance to be good, we need to have a systemic approach in institutional development, because the institution need to have a strategic plan, it need to have a risk management process implemented or monitored, and it should have developed performance management indicators. It should be looking at benchmarking. So all these systemic processes are absent from our institutions now. If these tools or these approaches are not there in institutional governance and document, then good governance cannot work. Because if we don't have a strategic plan, then we don't have a future perspective. So without future perspective, how governance can be effective? As we saw, the primary accountability of a governing body is to ensure that a definite strategic plan is in place. But if our institution doesn't have a plan, then governance. And at the same time, there are, I mean, you can't measure the performance of the institution, of the people, without establishing proper indicators. So there must be a process of establishing indicators. So institution need to have a systemic approach for institutional development, and also it need to have well-defined institutional processes. For everything, every transaction, every activity that happens in the institution, whether it is a teaching learning process, whether it is assessment, whether it is curriculum planning and design, there need to be proper processes. Then only we'll be able to measure the effectiveness of those processes. So a kind of a solid systemic approach, as well as well-defined, clear institutional processes will help us in developing governance document. And while I said that it took almost 6 months for us to develop this document, while developing this document, several issues, particularly contentious issues, will be raised. There may also be hesitation to adopt few of the best practices. While executive leadership and governing body members discuss, definitely few hesitation will be there on both the sides. So that's why I keep saying that active involvement of the board member and executive leadership is very essential. Few of the hesitations or touchy issues when we are formulating governance document will be, I mean, these are, you can say, a kind of touchy issues. A measurement of effectiveness of the board, conflict of interest, bringing in independent members, student participation in the board, okay, and scope and role of the board and executive leadership. This is a very important thing, where the role of board ends and where the role of executive leadership starts. I mean, it's a very overlap, and many times these two overlap on each other, board as well as executive leadership. There must be a clarity. Now let's move on to the second step. We already went into the detail of the first step, where we tried to define the desired state. Now the second step is self-view. Okay. So in fact, this step is very well explained in the TechWhip Good Governance Guidelines. Here, I would like to mention that for you to understand the present, you need to undertake the self-view of the current governance practices openly, honestly, and critically. It was observed at the central level that many institutions thought that for self-review there are marks. So everybody tried to say that they are doing everything. So the self-review submitted by the institutions were not really honest or realistic, I can say. So, but TechWhip or NPIU World Bank kept on saying that this is not for the marks, this is for your own improvement, for you to understand the gaps in the governance. For that, to understand the current state, because unless you are true in understanding or true in coming up with the current state, you will not be aware of the gap. Only the open, honest, and critical assessment can lead us to better development plan. Unless we are realistic about our gap, we can't have the plan to improve at all. To conduct this self-review, NPIU had given us this particular template. So here you can see that they had many questions in each of the 5 categories of the governance: primary accountabilities, transparencies, key attributes. So there were questions, and you were asked to grade yourself in reference to those questions, how well you are doing. If I mean 1, 2, 3 grades you are supposed to give. I mean, if you are doing everything, it is 3. If you are bad in it, it is 1. So once you have the grade, and also the gaps that are visible, you need to develop the plan for it. This is the format which most of the tech colleges across India have filled and submitted to the NPI. But here only one thing that lacked was, while we were filling the grade, we were not honest enough. We thought that better grade, better marks for the grants. That's why many of us were not forthcoming in agreeing to the present reality of governance in our institutions. For example, in our case, when we filled, there were 41% of the processes we had in governance were non-compliant. We scored very badly there. 3 was a bad score, sorry. Okay. So we said that only 24% of the processes are full compliance. We did not hesitate to accept the fact many of the processes that are there in BVB are either partial or non-compliant at that stage. 3 years back I am talking. So this frank or honest assessment which we submitted to the World Bank in very initial stages helped us to understand gap realistically. I have seen many forms out there which almost say that we are 100% compliant without having hardly 10 or 20% compliant, 100% has been claimed. Let's not do it. Let's be truthful in our self-view. So this is one of the examples of the format, how we filled the self-view document. So wherever we did not do, we underlined them and said that we have not done it. Formal approval of GC is not taken, they were not documented formally. These all things we agreed upon. Some places where we are doing very badly, okay, monitoring the head of the institution performance, that was not existent at that point of time. So formal arrangement for monitoring does not exist, we said, and rated ourselves as very bad 3. Okay, similarly, publication of annual report we are not doing at that point of time, we agreed for it. So through this, what I am trying to establish is more the truthful, more the frank we are in coming up with our own self-view, better will be our plan. The third step, once I know the current state and the desired state, we need to develop the governance development plan. This is the third step. This third step, we need to understand very clearly. Development plan, governance development plan is set of processes and activities that an organization would put in place to guide the governance development, to move from current state to desired state. It includes strategic measurable goals and objectives with respect to governance, goals with respect to governance, activities that are to be taken to move from current state to the desired state. Timeline is very important. Any development plan with a timeline, without the timeline, is not going to work. And also, we need to establish certain parameters or criteria for evaluation, which will tell us whether we have reached the goal or not. We have set the goal, we have defined the action, but how I will know that I have reached that particular goal? So criteria for evaluation, and also persons responsible to carry out those specific activities. If we include all these in our development plan, it will be, workable plan or a great plan, I can say. In fact, at BUB, this development plan, we divided it to 2 steps. First, we tried to write the development goal or objective for each of the perceived gap. We took the perceived gap from the self-review, okay? Then we wrote the goal or objective to fulfill, to overcome that particular gap. So, for example, there is a primary accountability, and our self-review tells that there is a particular gap. Sorry, there is a particular gap in it. Okay, our self-review has. So this, take this gap. Okay, you write specific actionable points in the development plan. Okay, so to overcome this particular self-review criteria, I mean the gap pursued in this particular self-review criteria, what are the specific actions that are going to be taken up? Developing and approval of institutional vision mission, developing and adopting a good governance document. So, and the timeline for it, expected delivery time frame. After this step one, another example I want to show you. This is where we fared very badly. We did not have any parameters to constantly monitor institutional performance and quality assurance arrangements. So we said that we'll establish keep of KPIs for measuring institutional performance, establish and adopt processes for monitoring the institutional performance using KPIs. So benchmarking, we set our own deadline, action point, and for each of them we set a timeline. So after developing this goals or objectives and actionable plans, we went a sub-step 2 in this. For each of those actionable items, we evolved detailed action plans. Just a format I would like to, this is the format we do, both formats we developed at BVB, and now they are adopted by the NPI as well as the World Bank and in the website. So here, activity, reviewing and approval of institutional vision, mission and strategic plan. Different other activities, sub-activities we define, what activities we will take up. For sub-activities, what is the timeline? Who are the persons responsible?
We've lost your slides, Ashok.
Okay.
You have to press show my screen again.
You have lost?
Yes,
There is
yes,
something
slide.
suddenly came up.
Yeah, something suddenly came up. What is some slides? We're not
You
seeing
got
it.
it?
No, we're not seeing
Okay.
your slides. You'll have to press show my screen again if it is not showing.
Where is because I'm getting something from Citrix. I don't know. Leave webinar. No. Where is that show my slide? This thing?
Now it's come. Yeah, it's come back.
No, it's my screen. I am going to make you the presenter.
That is your screen. Okay, no, that is that's Sridhar's screen. Okay.
Please
So
make him the
I-
presenter again.
I'm making you the presenter again, and now it might show up. Show my screen somewhere.
Oh, I'm not getting it.
Huh.
You want me to go out of this presentation mode?
No.
We are not seeing your screen, so suddenly lost your screen. You made your presenter, and I'm not sure why you're not.
Show my screen. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's come somewhere. It came briefly. It came briefly. Something came briefly and went away again.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It came back. Yeah, it's back again. You're all set.
It is back?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're all set. Yeah.
That's good.
Go ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah.
So, when we really look at the whole process that discussed so far, defining the desired state, current state, as well as specific plan, it's a continuous improvement process. Never think that all the things that are required to be done at desired state, you can do it at a time. Okay, we can go on improving our governance document. We can critically look at our self-view, as well as we can go on improving our development plans for the governance. So whole process we need to look at strategically as a continuous improvement process. While adopting good governance practices, few of the important learnings I would like to share, because yours and mine institutions are very similar. So probably you will also come across a few of the challenges or important. These learnings can be helpful to you people. The first and foremost, humbly, I want to request that don't adopt a good governance program because it is mandated by World Bank or NPI. Please adopt it with a genuine belief that it can make a positive difference to long-term development of your institution. In fact, when we started this good governance program, I mean, when the first letter came from NPIU, we thought that, okay, this was just a format filling process. But slowly we were drawn into it. Like the day we started believing that, okay, this is not for the sake of NPIU or World Bank, it is for the sake of our own institution, we need to do this, the changes we started seeing. For executive leadership, many times what happens that executive leadership may be convinced about it, your board may not be convinced about it. The reverse is also true. Sometimes I also seen board wants it, the executive leadership does not. So as an executive leader, you need to have or you need to buy in the support of governing body chair as well as the members. Only out of the desire of the executive leadership, it does not happen. And to I mean, to have a clear focus on this transformation process from current stage to the desired state, to oversee the good governance initiative, it is always advisable to have empowered subcommittee, because if there is a subcommittee, it can constantly review how the progress in adopting good governance practices is being made, and we can have an effective implementation. Another learning in this process was board versus executive leadership. As I mentioned earlier, there is a possibility that there is no clarity and roles and responsibility of board members and executive leadership. We need to understand and appreciate the distinct rules of both these entities. Few concern will be, I mean, we know that distinction between management and governance is not absolute. I mean, the executive leadership, many times the governing body tries to micromanage the things. Okay, many times executive leadership tries to assume certain powers which are there with the board. So, I mean, it may not be out of intention, bad intention, but it may happen unknowingly. That's where the document helps us to clarify the. So that's what board members are unclear about difference between governance and management. Board, this is one observation we saw often. Board that is overly active in management can inhibit the organization effectiveness. It can step on or step upon the executive leadership space and really try to micromanage the things that can uh, affect the institution. At the same time, executive leadership unclear about board's expectation. Sometimes I've seen board coming up with a sudden this thing, and executive leadership is not happy about it because it is not clear about their expectations. There is a possibility that tensions arise commonly in the areas of overlap. Always, to avoid all these things, there need to be a good effective partnership between board and executive leadership. Each party needs to understand its own responsibilities, limitations, what roles they have to play. Okay, so I would like to put forth before you which I consider as few of the characteristics of effective partnership. There need to be very good communication between particularly the chief of the executive leadership, that is the principal, and the board chair. A constant communication, a regular communication, not daily I am talking about, a regular communication once in fortnight or a month with the chair can really build a better partnership or understanding. Ability to disagree constructively, trust and respect on each other, willingness to learn, clarity of roles and responsibilities. These are the few characteristics of effective partnership between executive leadership and board. Another learning we had was the importance of the independent members in the boards. Particularly in Indian context, for a very long time, our boards neglected this aspect. We did not bring the independent members into our boards effectively, because these independent members bring a lot of value to the board. I mean, that we need to realize. It was a big realization for us how independent members can really enrich the board meetings, board transaction, board decisions. Choosing the right independent board member is very critical. These are the qualities we should be looking for. The independent member must be able to provide broad, varied perspective to drive the institutional strategic direction. He must have a wide exposure himself, must have seen a lot of organizations and institutions. He should be strategic in nature. As a traditional educational institutions, we lack this particular approach. It is always good to bring a person who can think strategically and critically, and many of the skills that are there gaps that are gaps in our board, he should be able to fill those gaps. He should be coming up with a skill which really complements the present skill in the board. And you can't bring a totally unrelated person who cannot totally understand the education and the stakeholders involved in it. Apart from having the wide perspective or a varied perspective, he should be able to relate to the stakeholders. And he should be able to gain the respect of the executive leadership as a mentor. That's very important. Principal or the other executive leadership should be looking at that independent member as a kind of a guru or a mentor, you can say. That will help. And most important thing is his commitment, his passion about education. Okay, and is he ready to contribute enough amount of right amount of time? Is he willing to just come for the meeting and go back, or is he willing to contribute right amount of time and ready to take the responsibilities? And as I told you, must thing is he must have a passion and commitment for the education. With all the other things, this is also important character you should be looking at when you choose the independent member. And you should really engage these independent members in not only just in meetings, in many of the institutional activities you should engage these independent. That is most important. If the governing body has a practice of delegating some powers to nominated committees, you can really use the independent members very well. Okay, and because these empowered bodies can take certain tasks and do them in a right way, in a more detailed way, so that they can present it to the board for the sanctions. So always governing body should have the practice of constituting empowered committees for different tasks with different skills of the independent members put into it. Then many burdens or time limit the board has can be overcome. And at the same time, these committees will engage the interest of your independent members, as well as use the skills and the experience of your independent members. For example, in our case, one independent member, how exactly he contributes, we fix up, I mean, in what areas he need to contribute to a particular person. Another person will be contributing in strategies, entrepreneurship, mentoring. Somebody else, some other independent member will be present, I mean, industry interface, networking. So like this, based upon capabilities, their experience, each independent members in our board takes up certain tasks and reports to the board. I mean, we have a very good resources created by the World Bank and NPIU. Please visit this particular website, techgoodgovernance.in, and all what I have talked to you, many of the documents I referred to are available in detailed format. For example, good governance document developed by BUB are there on this website, and our detailed self-reviews are available. Our own detailed development plans are available on this website. This is a fantastic collection of the worldwide best practices that are there in governing the educational institutions. This can enrich us in a great way. I request all of you to visit this particular website. And finally, from BUB, we thank NPIU and World Bank and three people who really motivated and supported us to learn and improve in terms of good governance. I cannot say that we are yet, I mean, we are totally there. It's a journey. I mean, it is work in progress. We have to achieve a lot, but whatever little we have done, I try to share with you. We believe at BUB that in good governance, belief and commitment that they can affect us in a great way, help us to grow our institution, a systemic approach, leadership and synergy mean the good governance. These are the three things that are very important in adopting good governance practices. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shettar. This was excellent, and I appreciate your effort in putting it all together. I assume we have a little time to take some questions, so I encourage the audience to start texting questions, please. We have one question which is relevant, which is very relevant. That is from Dr. Tushar Nath of MIT University. He asks, what gaps could you find in the transition from an institution under affiliated university to a standalone university?
Okay. You see, in terms of governance, I would rather question this. In terms of governance, what happens is, in a affiliated, in an autonomous system, the governing board becomes more empowered. Okay, that is one thing. The second thing is the roles and responsibility of the governing board will enhance as an autonomous institution or as a university, because here you need to be particularly careful in developing the parameters that measure the institutional performance, that measure the performance of the institutional head. Okay, they vary a lot, particularly when we are trying to set the parameters to measure the effectiveness of a autonomous institution. Okay, you can't take just results as the parameter. There are a variety of things you need to look at. I mean, how exactly, what are the parameters which tell me that my curriculum design process is improving year by year? Okay, attainment of the outcomes is improving year by year. How my assessment system is really changing. So once you become autonomous or a university, the parameters keep changing. So the wisdom that lies in picking up the right parameter to measure ourselves as well as benchmark ourselves with the others will become very different when you become autonomous institution or a university. The second thing is fairly independent institutions or like autonomous institution or universities will be growing in many directions compared to affiliated uh, institutions. So you need to definitely bring in more and more intelligence or experience into your board. So in an affiliated system, usually that gap is not felt because the role of the institution is very limited. But once the role of the institution becomes larger, as in the case of autonomous institution or a university, what happens is the kind of intelligence that is required in the board, that is in terms of the kind of independent board members you bring in. I mean, those are the critical things. That's the gap you need to be filling. I mean, these are the few gaps. I do.
Thanks. Thanks, Dr. Shettar. I think that question is a very important question, which I'm sure needs a lot of discussion in the future
Sure.
as well,
Yeah.
because many institutions are now becoming applying for autonomy, but some of them do not maybe realize what is the responsibilities and what are the complexities. And so I think as a community of engineering educators, we can all work together to help those institutions. I think of course, AMIT University is a very well-known university, and I'm glad to see the comment from Ritu Bhatnagar that there are a large number of people from AMIT University attending your session. So this is very good. Thank you. Thank you from AMIT for spending your time on this webinar. Siddharth Jadeja asks a very important question again regarding benchmarking. Do we need to do self-review with some benchmark? I mean, for example, shall we need to do a match it with IIT or some other high-level institute? I think it's a very important point you might want to address, Ashok.
Yeah. Benchmarking, you see, always it is advisable to do benchmark with the institution which has a demonstrable, which has demonstrated a little more than you. Probably if it is just an affiliated college or a new autonomous college, you should not be benchmarking yourself with the IIT. Okay, the focuses of these institutions or the mandates of these institutions are very different, and the stage at which they are different. For example, a new autonomous college should be looking to benchmark itself with a autonomous college, let's say 6-7 years old, and is really performing well. Okay, I mean, it is perceived as a good college through by the stakeholders. So while benchmarking, because we need to, for the next 2 or 3 years, we need to build realistic expectations. Okay, so just a new autonomous college can't benchmark with the IIT. Instead of that, the one which it feels it is doing better than having the same status but having more experience and doing better than it. So benchmarking is a process which will also depend upon the parameters you develop for benchmarking, the parameters you decide for the benchmarking. These parameters are also important in deciding with what kind of institution you are going to benchmark. Okay, so this is the broad answer.
Okay, good, excellent. So, so right now there are no additional questions. I just want to close by thanking everybody for participating, and also I noticed 1 or 2 participants had audio problems, and I apologize for that. But I guess there's nothing we can do from our end because the audio for the most part was fine. And to just for your information, there is a recording that is being made, and so this will be converted, and we can send it out to all of you to review, and also to let you know that as a community, we need to work together, and and we plan to take this forward and keep a lookout for emails from me and others to in this regard, because this is as I said in the beginning of the webinar, this is the most important recommendation from the group that met in January under the auspices of World Bank.